Hello and welcome to another episode of Allo and Ace podcast. I am the Allosexual Skylar.
And I'm the Asexual, Jessie.
Jesse.
Hi.
We're on episode 14.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is crazy. And trigger warning, this podcast is a podcast that discusses sexuality, specifically asexuality. And with that, there could possibly be talk about SA as well as self-harm.
Sexual encounters.
And we will put any of that in the show notes ahead of time. So if you haven't read that and you need to, then now would be the time.
Yes. And also a friendly reminder that Skylar and I are not professionals. We are just mere humans living the human experience and talking about it. And we just so happen to have an allosexual and asexual marriage to talk about.
Yes, and anyone can have a podcast, so
it's true.
we could really just say
you don't need to be certified.
If this is your first time tuning in, we always recommend that you start with episode 1, especially because if I'm not mistaken, we are going to be talking about stuff that correlates a lot with episode 3.
Yes.
Before we get to that, Jessie?
Yeah.
How's it going?
It's been a really educational 6 days.
Education.
We're going to go with, it's been an educational week is really what I meant to say.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of life experiences. And I cried for the first time in therapy yesterday.
Do you want to give any, I don't know, nuggets from therapy?
Well, I feel like it's just so important to be so honest with your therapist as long as you've felt safe with them, because you're not going to get anywhere if you don't just be honest.
So do you feel like sometimes you are not as vulnerable as you could be?
See, I feel like I'm always honest in therapy, but because it was the first time I ever cried in therapy, I kind of feel like I probably talk about my feelings in therapy, but I don't feel my feelings in therapy. I don't know if it's that or if it's that I usually get a really good cry in at
Ahead
some
of time.
point. Yeah. And I'm just not one, unless something has severely impacted me, I'm not one to just cry off and on throughout the whole day.
Yeah.
You know, I have done that with certain things recently.
Yeah.
But this session of therapy was not like that. And I didn't think I was going to cry, but then I did. And my therapist is so amazing. I'm not going to lie. She's just so kind. And she listens to me word vomit all the time. I don't word vomit pretty much at all to anybody. Skylar, do you feel like I word vomit on you? Maybe like 75%.
I don't know if I would call it that because we just talk all the time.
We do. I don't
think there's ever a time where you're like, sit down and then you just go 30 minutes on whatever.
Right. I feel like I think out loud in therapy so much, like the whole hour. And I don't know if I necessarily think out loud constantly talking with you. I feel like I'm a little bit more
put together.
Yeah, well, just a little bit more intentional.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't meaning put together as in nothing's wrong. I was putting it more like organized.
Yeah, I'm definitely intentional when I talk with you, unless something really big has happened and I pretty much can't control whatever. I need to just talk out, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and then in therapy, it's not intentional. I feel like a squirrel running everywhere. It goes so many different directions. And I did promise her this week, for next week, I was like, I promise you we're going to talk about this. But we'll see. I did have a really weird aha moment yesterday, and I feel kind of dumb for it. And it's not really about asexuality, but I think it's a good thing to say. I had this aha moment that friends aren't always compatible. And that sounds so silly. But I think because of my upbringing in the religion I was brought up in, which a lot of you know was Mormonism, and I feel like you could put a lot of different religions in place of that. It's not just Mormonism that could create this, but I feel like I was brought up to be thinking that everyone was my friend. Like you made friends with everybody and you're supposed to always be their friend. It was never really talked about that you don't have to be friends with everybody. It was like trust everybody at church, definitely, even when you really shouldn't be. And so what that's led me to in my life is to have really unusual attachments to knowing when to let go, like not recognizing that it's okay that there's incompatibility amongst friends. And I always thought it was just for romance, like for a romantic relationship. So what's your thought on that? I feel dumb. I kind of feel dumb for it because I'm like 36 years old and I didn't realize I could kind of pick my friends and be selective.
Well, if you think about you having friends, but you're not friends with their friends typically.
Yeah.
So it goes to show like that not everyone is compatible. If that wasn't the case, then everyone would be friends with everybody.
Well, I guess I need to break that down a bit. I mean that if I talk with you, if I meet you,
Yeah.
then you're automatically my friend. And I just think that you're my friend forever. And I will always think that you're my friend. I don't even say like acquaintance, really.
Well, we've talked about you being a people collector.
I am, but I think this is why.
Yeah. I mean,
it makes sense to me now. And it's crazy to me that I didn't realize. Crazy.
Yeah, I get that. I think that I've done some, we've talked about how I deleted probably 250 people off of Facebook that were acquaintances of some sort just because I was like, I don't know why I'm quote unquote friends with them.
Yeah, there's nothing happening there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, not that if you ran into them, cool. Of course you would be nice and cordial and say hi.
But yeah, I just feel like I don't have a lot of time to have people that I don't really I guess it was like, so what? I went to high school with you.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't care what you're doing with your life.
And is that because they're not showing that they care about what you're doing with your life?
Well, not only that, but I feel like they're so far. The people that I did remove were so far in a different way of politically or belief, or that it's just like I don't even know what we have in common anymore.
So there was no actual strong base to begin with. We're not talking like best friends for life, and then because
it's more so like what you were talking about, where they were in your church group as teenagers, and so you feel like you have to maintain some kind of communication or relationship with those people because that's what the church kind of made you.
Right. It's interesting, and I've been called a people collector or a people. Is that right? People collector for such a long time. And I couldn't pinpoint why. I just have always said I really enjoy different perspectives and different people. I'm an extroverted extrovert, but it has been toxic for me because I have stayed within friendships where there is literally no give and take at all.
I do think that there's an awkward phase of friendships where you don't know how to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of are put in a spot where it's like, I don't know, like you don't want to be the person to like delete them because I don't know. It's just weird. There's weird things with friendships, especially when you're adults and you're like, I don't know if I care to ever talk to this person again, but what if they see that I deleted them and then they reach out and they're like, why'd you delete me? And then you're like, I thought we weren't as close.
Well, someone did delete me a little while ago, and I'm not talking about the best friendship thing that happened. I've known this person since I was 12 years old, and I thought of them, so I thought to reach out and say hi and ask how they were doing, because that's what I do, to find out that they deleted me. And then
Yeah.
I was like, what? So I messaged them and said, hey, it's nothing. I don't take it personally. I just wanted to make sure, is there anything that I did? And I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. So I would be that person that would ask that. But I don't know, after having this aha moment yesterday, if I would still be that person, because this was a huge mind shift for me yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't have to be friends with anybody I don't want to be friends with.
It is hard because there's also the business networking side of things where
Yeah.
I've removed people just to have someone message me back or try to add me back and be like, hey, just whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, since you wanted to, but it's weird. I don't know.
With social media, it just makes it extra weird.
Yeah, and I
You have to delete people or whatever from like 20 different places.
I just got tired of always being the person reaching out to like try to make the connection.
Yeah, and that's hard too. And I tend to be that person as well. Definitely. So it's like I said, it's been an educational week for several reasons, you know? And therapy was really good. It was a good thing I had therapy yesterday. I had a bit of a meltdown cry. Not that big, but I did have a really strong reaction over the weekend to a sexual experience. And that was probably the worst reaction I've had. So I did talk about that in therapy.
So is this where we would normally have the asexual moment of the week?
Yeah, but we got to really work on that.
I thought I nailed it. I don't know about you.
Yeah. No. And it's a serious asexual moment
It
of the
is.
week, and it's going to just segue into the whole episode. So, do you have anything else that you want to bring up before we get into this story?
I don't think so.
So, we're just going to dive right in.
We're diving right in. So if you remember a whole episode ago, we talked about kissing.
Yeah.
And we talked about, how that has changed since you've come out asexual.
Mm-hmm.
And we learned live on the podcast of your reactions to that.
Yeah.
And then it was but a few days later that this all unfolded.
Yes, it was. And there wasn't anything weird that came from talking about the kissing in the last episode. So, I mean, I don't think it relates to this situation happening. But, yeah.
I think we should probably preface this with the fact that this has, in the past, before you've come out asexual, happened a few times where in the middle of the night things kind of happen.
Yeah. So let's give the details here. Well, let's say first, this is going to be about a sexual encounter involving sex. So if you need a moment, here's your little warning for that. So in the past, in the middle of the night, in our half awake, half dreamy states, Skylar and I have been known to canoodle a bit, like get a little kissy, I guess. And in the past, before I knew I was asexual, it would lead to just having sex in the dark, in literally the middle of the night, 2:30 a.m. So I haven't had that happen yet, or I hadn't had that happen yet since coming out as asexual. And if you
Like we've kissed and stuff, but not.
it never led to
Yeah.
sex. It never led to sex.
Because we kiss all the time.
Yes, we do. So if you remember in previous episodes, I've talked about how I have had to just ask myself repeatedly so much, do I want to have sex today? Do I want to have sex today? Do I want to have sex today? And it's like, no, 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 no. And then I finally, like days and days of doing this, I finally am like, okay. And it's not been good. It's led to panic attacks during sex in various ways, and it's not been great. So,
I think that's only been the last 2 times.
Yeah, we only have a few times.
It's true.
So this
in 6 months, it's happened twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been difficult too. And, you know, I didn't even know I was averse/repulsed at first. I thought I was indifferent. Actually, what did you say? I thought I was favorable for a moment. I thought
maybe.
I was because I was in denial.
Yeah.
And then I moved to indifferent because I wanted to be indifferent so badly. And then I started having interesting reactions as I unwrapped and felt comfortable in my own skin. And it just keeps unwrapping.
Yeah, because I think for the first probably 6 months, maybe first 5 months, it was like a couple times a month, and you seemed like pretty for it, if you will. And then the last 6 months, that's when it was really like, no.
Oh, I don't even remember it being a couple times a month. I remember it being like once a month.
Possibly. But I think there was a couple months in there, like in November, December, where it happened a couple times in each month or something. But then after January, it stopped.
You know, I almost wonder, going back there before we move on.
Yeah.
I had my surgery in January, and so there was no thought of that happening.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if that gave me clarity subconsciously.
Maybe.
You know, like it made me feel like I don't need to do this. I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
What made it slow down even more, or just getting more comfortable as time went on. I don't know. So anyway, there
was no time. It was nowhere. It was not in your mind at all.
No, it was not in my mind at all.
Even in a trying to convince yourself way.
No, I hadn't asked myself at all. As a matter of fact, I haven't been asking myself that mentally, like for a few months now, maybe a couple months, not a few, maybe a couple months, ever since we've kind of talked through it.
Since the anniversary ordeal?
Probably. And my therapist was like,
why
are you doing this? Don't do this to yourself. And so I haven't been. So in the middle of the night, in my half dreamy state, Skylar and I start kissing a bit, and it feels nice. It feels safe. It feels comfortable. And I think after I kind of more fully wake up, I think this should be okay. Like I feel okay with progressing this. I'm going to see how this goes. This feels okay.
Mm-hmm.
It felt so safe. It felt like I haven't been trying to prepare myself for days and days. Mentally, I haven't been racking my brain. It just seems like, okay, this is the most natural it could be.
Yeah.
Right?
At 2 a.m.
At 2 a.m. in the dark. And so I decide to make a move that definitely states, let's move forward with this, with having sex. And we get about a minute in and things start to turn for me. And I'm just thinking, why? And I'm not happy about it, because I'm like, here I thought I was going to be okay. Like it felt like this was the most ideal situation for me to feel okay with this. And I started unraveling, but it was dark. So Skylar was on top of me and tears started just coming out of my eyes. And it was a slow trickle at first. And then I started thinking, I need him to just be done. you know what? And like in that moment, I should have said, I can't do this. We need to stop. But I didn't listen to it. I didn't listen to that. I thought, I can get through this, which is, don't do this. Everybody listening that's asexual, if you feel this way or similarly to the way I feel, you need to stop if you're having those kinds of feelings, because it is likely going to do more damage from my experience if you continue to do it. And also, it can do more damage to your allosexual partner because they certainly don't want to have you breaking down from having sex with them. So anyway, it starts to turn. I'm starting to feel not good at all. And I tell Skylar, can you be done? And what did you say? Did you say, I think you said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, just you need to be done.
Yeah, I think I said, are you, I can't remember if I said, are you sure? Are you okay? Or, you know.
You checked in. You did somewhat of a check-in. And I said, yeah, you just need to be done.
And I want to say that, you know, this happened in January when you cried. And it also happened in April when you cried.
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about how I am only going off of what you're saying, even if normally I would be like, she's crying, I should not do this.
Yeah.
But because you want to get through things or have a better understanding of yourself,
or I want to make choices for myself.
Make choices for yourself, it would be worse for me to, in those moments, be like, I'm not doing this, you're crying, you're definitely not okay, so why would I want to do this?
Because I would get upset.
Yeah.
This is where it's sad, because I feel like I should be able to trust myself, you know, and I've worked so hard and unwrapped so many things, but you can't ever predict new situations, really. And this happened to be a new situation as far as since I came out as asexual and figured that out. We hadn't had this dreamlike situation, half dream state situation. And so I felt like this would be ideal. I should be fine.
I think I think we've had instances where we've been kissing a lot or something, and I've just rolled over because I'm like, we need to stop, or whatever. But I think because some of the movements you were making and things like that,
I made a choice.
I was like, okay.
I made a very clear choice. I made it very clear, like, hey, we can progress this. So I asked him to be done, like, get finished with it.
Get finished.
And so he starts doing his thing. And as he's doing his thing to get himself more revved up, whatever that means, get more into it, more passionate, I can feel that he is being more passionate. And I think that that's what like triggered me even more, because it makes it so clear to me that I definitely do not feel the same way as he does. And it does a couple of things. It makes me feel weird. It makes me feel so bad that he's so into it, and I just not. I don't feel the same way, but I love him so much. And I just, like, it's not a slow trickle of tears at this point. It's like downpouring out of the corners of my eyes. And he's still, I don't know, did you realize that I was crying that bad? I was silent crying.
Yeah, it was dark. So
it was very dark, and I was silent crying. He wouldn't have known. I wasn't making a peep. Like, I was not like making any indication that I was crying, unless he happened to feel my face or something, and he didn't. And so I know it took a turn for the worse when it felt more passionate from him.
Because it was less anatomical at that point.
It definitely was less anatomical. It was like the focus was the passion, and it's such an absence of passion on my end.
It made it glaring.
Yes, glaringly obvious. It was like just a gut punch. So he's doing this thing for a bit, and in my head I'm like, why is this taking so long? Like, you know, and I'm just streams of tears coming out, and he asks, can I flip you around? And I said, yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is going to make it quicker. This is going to be better because, well, it's going to happen quicker, I'm sure. And so I flip around and he starts doing his thing. And at this point, like whatever was a downpour of tears coming out, I don't know how it can be extra than that, but it was. And it was still silent. He didn't know. I was having a silent panic attack and I was trying to get through it. And he finishes. Well, I want to pause there for a second because it's a huge, excuse my language, but it's a huge mind fuck to have something physically feel good, but you hate it at the same time. You're like, I physically, it's not like it hurts or anything.
Yeah, we talked about that in one of the first episodes where physically, anatomically, your body reacts.
Yes, it reacts totally fine.
But
mentally,
yes.
I am like, get me out of here. I don't like this. It doesn't feel natural. I'm feeling violated. I don't like it. I don't like it. So you have this physical part that feels good, but then you're like, I don't want to be doing this. Why am I doing this? And it is so rough. I don't understand on my brain. Like it's so frustrating. So he gets done and I very quickly, grab some wipes and I put my robe on. And I like dart upstairs. Like I didn't say anything to you, did I?
I don't think so.
No. I dart upstairs and go to the bathroom and I just start sobbing my eyes out. And I'm trying to be kind of quiet because, the kids are upstairs sleeping and whatnot. And I was freaking out. And it was probably the worst reaction I've had so far. And then this shame cycle started happening of just like, what's wrong with you? You love him so much. He would never hurt you. You're safe. Why can't you just feel happy about this? Why can't you feel passionate? Why can't you like it? Why do you have to be averse? This is awful. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And it sucked. I'm not going to lie. I was a mess. So I tried to get myself together a bit and came back downstairs, climbed in bed, and Skylar started holding me a bit in bed, like hugging me in bed. And did you ask me are you okay?
I can't remember if I asked you that. I think I did, and then you just
And then I
lost
started,
it.
then I started bawling my eyes out again, and it wasn't silent. And I just told them I feel so bad about all of it. And I don't understand it. It makes me so angry. And I just I've gotten confident with my asexuality as far as not being sexually attracted to anybody. But I think that there's quite a bit of resistance to the fact that I am averse / repulsed by it. And I don't know how to overcome it, but I'm willing and happy to. And I think it's so important to talk about these experiences because I can only imagine how many experiences like this are happening amongst other asexual couples. So, yeah. So while we were laying there and I was crying and telling him what all the things I was thinking and how bad I felt, he said that we should just take sex off of the table completely. And then I got more upset because it just feels so final to say that. I have been in denial.
I want to clarify that I wasn't doing it or saying it in a defensive, rude way at all.
No, he was saying it in a kind way. He was saying it in a way of, I don't ever want you to feel like this again. I don't want to make this happen again.
And it's happened. So this is the third time in a row, in 6 months, whatever, but to me, it was like, and this is where we, kind of go into boundaries in episode 3, where To me, it feels like Jessie was trying to understand her boundaries.
Yeah.
So the first time you cry and you're like, okay, that happened. The second time, the day after our anniversary, you're like, maybe it'll be different. And then you cry.
I had a panic attack that
have
time.
a panic attack.
Like a mini one.
And then 2.5 months later, this happens. And so for me, it's like, I feel like you've tested that boundary enough to know that you don't want to be doing it.
From your perception.
From my perception.
Yeah.
Is like you should understand your boundary, and it no longer, because of the averse repulsed, my story is that if it was someone who was more neutral to favorable, they wouldn't have any negative reaction to it. It would just be what it is. Even if it is anatomical for someone who is indifferent,
Mm-hmm.
or even if it was someone who was like favorable and really enjoying it because of the physical pleasure,
Mm-hmm.
where they might, because they are not necessarily thinking about it per se, but they still are enjoying or not having a negative reaction to it.
Yeah.
To where someone who is averse or repulsed, I don't know how that reaction is ever not going to be a negative reaction.
Well, and it also just keeps getting worse. Like I'm having a deeper and deeper negative reaction to it. And part of me thinks that, I don't know, it could be that I didn't know I was asexual, obviously, and I was having sex when I really didn't want to be having sex since for the last, 20 plus years, right? Yeah. And so,
21 years.
Is it? Am I that old? 17.
I don't know.
Whatever the math is on that, okay, guys? It's around 20 years. It's almost like my body is just rejecting it completely now. I think I've always been averse to it. I just didn't have a name for it and didn't recognize it. And I also had all the pressures that I thought I had to be this way or that way. And so I think my body is done. It's just like, no, you are going to have this negative physical reaction every time because you don't want to be doing this, and we don't know why you keep doing this. This is my brain talking to me subconsciously. So I don't know if it's like years and years of built up non-wanting to have sex and doing it anyway to now be like, no.
Yeah, because your persona, the persona that you had, it wasn't an indifferent persona.
No.
It wasn't an adverse or repulsed persona. It was actually a quite favorable persona.
Yeah, and knowing myself, I am extreme.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that my persona was trying to be the most extreme. Yes, and it also makes sense that me testing my own boundaries right now is like on the extreme end where I keep trying to test the most extreme ways, right, of doing this. So I've been saying in many different places to different people when it's been asked about that Skylar and I have a nearly sexless marriage. And it's like I've been holding on to that nearly. And for him to say, I really think that sex needs to just be off the table, it's absolutely terrifying. It feels just scary to me.
And it's not that it's happening a lot. It's not that it's happening where you're constantly, even once a month trying to figure out where you're at with it.
No, but I can still say nearly.
Yeah. But
it's
even
not just sexless, it's nearly sexless.
Even if it was once a year, you could still say nearly.
I would still say nearly. And for some reason, it's like I have a death grip on that word, nearly, because I feel just the deepest sense of rejection of everybody around me of mine and Skylar's marriage by saying we're in a sexless marriage. That makes me feel like everyone will just pour on the feel bads 20 times worse, 20 times heavier. Can you see that, Skylar?
I mean, because if they're already doing it now.
Yeah. Poor Skylar, poor Skylar. He has it so awful. He must really love her. It sucks. It's not fun. And I know that I need to just ignore it. I need to ignore how we're perceived in our marriage. There's just so much brainwashing from society, religion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that makes it so hard to believe that it's possible. Because let's face it, it is out of the norm to have a actual sexless marriage and be so incredibly happy. No one looks at it like that.
Do you feel like you're having any sort of reaction because I'm the one that brought it up? Like you feel like I'm taking something away, a choice away from you?
No, I feel like in the most feminist way possible, I feel like you're trying to be protective because not only for me though, but for yourself too. What is this doing to you? Let's be honest. Let's have an even extra honest moment, Skylar.
Well, and that's why I wanted to clarify, a few minutes ago, in a normal situation, there's no way in hell that I would ever be having sex with someone who's crying while I'm having sex with them.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
I would immediately stop and say, you're not in a position to continue. You're clearly something is happening physically, emotionally. Can I get you a glass of water? Can I help you get dressed?
Right. Do you think if the lights were a bit more on, what do you think your reaction would have been if you knew that I was literally just stream crying out of my eyeballs?
Again, I think it's hard because we have talked numerous times and you have said, like, if you stop, or if when I say let's have sex, you say, are you sure? It's going to upset you.
Yeah. So it's just been, it's confusing. That's probably one of the only confusing things, huh?
Yeah. So for me, it was just like, okay, I tried whatever food. I didn't like it the first time. I gagged. Tried it the second time. Same reaction. If not, even had like a mild allergic reaction to it. Third time, I don't know why I thought it was going to be different, but because I didn't have to talk myself into like pretending it was something else or plug my nose, and it smelled really good. And so I was like, oh, this might be different. And then I eat it and I throw up. It's like, okay, when am I going to stop trying to eat this food that I'm clearly repulsed by?
Yeah, but you know what? There's another mental part of this that I feel so bad using the word repulsed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not repulsed by you at all.
Well, and it goes back to like...
It's a strong word.
Even in that setting, like, I'm not repulsed by your cooking, generally speaking. But for some reason, the taste, texture, whatever of said food, I just can't do it. And
that's actually a little bit of a good analogy.
And it doesn't mean anything about your cooking skills. It doesn't mean anything about you as a person.
Yeah. Don't you think that that's a good analogy for the hierarchy of sexual intimacy? That it's just a different dish.
Yeah.
And it's a dish that you're allergic to.
And you know what? I mean, really. Some people like, look, we love our vegan food that we make, but a lot of the stuff that we make can have mushrooms in it or tomatoes, and there's a lot of people that are not a fan of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And so even though we are super excited to make it for someone, if we say, what are your things that you don't like? And they say mushrooms, we can't just be like, well, but you haven't tried my mushrooms or how I cook it. You can't even tell. It doesn't matter. Like, they don't like mushrooms.
Well, I think it's better to say that they're allergic to them. That's really what it's like, because I feel like I can't help how I am with this. You know, you can't help what you're allergic to. I know it's a little bit weird to have these analogies, but I feel like they can go a long
I think
way.
people can relate more to them.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad that you're super into beekeeping, but I'm allergic to bees.
Yeah.
So I will never be a beekeeper.
Yeah. So, I mean, after you've seen me break down though, and you know what's actually happened, and I have just freaked out, had just a breakdown. What does that feel like for you, having just been inside of me having sex, and this is the reaction?
It doesn't. So I am at a place where I don't have an ego with it.
Okay.
So it's not that my ego is hurt or anything. I just feel bad that you're having such a hard time with it, and me knowing that a lot of these reactions are because you're trying to create your boundaries or understand your boundaries better.
Yeah.
So even with the example that you gave with the oral, and you're like, I want to try this because that was a boundary that you didn't know what your boundary was on that
Yeah.
yet. And with that, you were like, oh, I'm actually more indifferent. Not that you ever want me to ask you if I can or request it,
It wouldn't be a good idea.
but you know for yourself if whenever you want to ask me to do that again, you have at least a decent idea that you know that you'll be indifferent.
For now, yeah.
For now.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
It could change, sure. So for me, it just got to the point, not that I'm frustrated or anything, but I just don't want you to agonize over it if there's no reason to.
Yeah.
Because if I'm willing to say, I know how hard this is for you and how uncomfortable this is for you and how violating you feel from this, that I don't want to ever have that be a situation that you're in. And I can control that because I can just say, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah. I wish it didn't feel so heavy. I wish it didn't feel so scary to say we have a sexless marriage. But
And
it is.
I think for me saying take it off the table, it's more so of a thing where it's like, don't try to test your boundaries, or don't be in a position where you're like thinking anything about feeling bad or it's been so long and I want to give this to Skylar. I mean, who knows? Down the road, you may just very well have something happen and you're like, I don't know, super horny or something, and you're like, I want to do it. But I just don't want it to be, and it's not like I'm going to be like, no, but
I just don't foresee that happening.
yeah, and I don't either, but I don't want you to also feel like if you did, who knows, a couple years down the road or something, have something you want to do that you feel like, well, I can't because he said it's off the table. I just mean that we don't need to be testing any boundaries.
You feel
or
like
anything.
we don't need to test sex any longer.
No.
Like we have a good understanding of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
there could be other things that you are still wanting to test that are not quite that.
Maybe.
But we haven't talked about them, I would never bring it up, but that's for you to, think about in the future. But again, I guess the question would be like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, why do you feel like you need to do any sexual things with
Right.
hands, mouths, whatever?
Like what it comes down to is, in my natural, normal state, it's not there.
Yeah, it's not on your mind. It's not.
It would be something that I would be forcing on my brain. So my therapist, after I talked to her about the situation that happened, my therapist asked me to think about this for the next session, and that is, what does a sexless marriage look like to you? And I did have a bit of a triggering moment yesterday after the session when I told Skylar that the therapist asked me to think about that, because when I said that, he said, it looks exactly like what it sounds like, a sexless marriage. And
I said, it's in the name.
he said, it's in the name. And I said, Skylar, it's not that simple, though. I'm glad that you can make it so simple in your head, but it is so complicated and heavy in my head. It feels scary. I don't like it. And I did get a bit upset because I felt like almost like,
Dismissive.
it was dismissed that it should be so simple. This is it. But it's not it. It feels so sad in my brain to wrap my head around that. It feels like I am failing, like I've failed. And I know that that's not right. I know that's not healthy. I know that it's something that I need to work through, and I know I can, but it's going to take some time. But for sure, it's complex in my brain.
Well, and I think there's just some interesting things around it, because in a normal situation, you can look at any couple and you have no clue if they're having sex or not having sex. You don't know the amount. You don't know when the last time was. You really don't know. And so I think that a lot of it has to do with, one, the podcast, two, because it is a sexual orientation that is a silent one, and there needs to be more representation and more understanding, we're willing to be vulnerable and open to everyone knowing exactly how long it's been, what the reaction was, and
That's
all
why
of
it
that.
will come up. Not to say that we always have to answer with anybody that asks us this, but we are talking about it. Like, that's the thing. We're out there.
Yep.
We're openly talking about our sex life and the interesting situations that are happening through this, the hard, super vulnerable situations that are happening. But we also have an understanding that it's helping others feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole episode is about this experience, because it was a big enough experience to go through thoughtfully. And boundaries, testing your boundaries a bit, is so important to understand that these moments will happen.
And that's what I wanted to speak on, was you have to, so the asexual person really needs to have some kindness to yourself, to understand that when you're trying to understand and create your boundaries, you're going to make mistakes, because you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yeah, and sometimes you keep trying even if you do know a little bit.
So there's a lot of people who they'll say, oh, the sex was really crazy in the beginning and it was happening all the time, and she seemed, or he seemed, very passionate and very much like they enjoyed it, and then it just stopped, and then we found out that they're asexual and now they don't want to do anything with me. And so when you're at that place where there is that void, if you will, and then you now have an understanding of yourself as an asexual person and what that looks like to you, then you're figuring out, okay, well, what does that mean? How do I navigate it? And you're going to stumble. You're going to
It's painful.
You're going to miscalculate the landing.
It's uncomfortable. It is.
And for the allosexual partner, you have to be kind to yourself, but also to your partner. And you really have to have an understanding that it's not about you. The reaction that they're having isn't because of you. It's not because you're hideous or you're an ugly personality or disgusting person. It's literally that they love you, but that part of the relationship is not there. And if you take it personally, it's only going to drive a wedge and drive that void more. And it's just going to leave you frustrated, angry, upset, hurt, and push you away as a couple.
Yeah, that's the other thing with this. You're testing these boundaries to see where they're at. You don't know what's going to happen.
Nope.
And can you imagine how much worse that would have been for a couple things to happen? Okay, so I have this freak out after we've just had sex. I break down, I'm bawling my eyes out, and you're like, wow, this makes me feel real good. You know, if you said something like that, I would have twice as much shame than I already have for it. Amongst all the other things that are going on in my brain, not just the part of feeling so bad for you, but just feeling all the other things that come with it as well. Or can you imagine I could have a poor reaction too, where I'm not willing to talk openly about this is how it felt. This is where I think that it got worse. This is this. And I just close up. I mean, I can't imagine. So with that being said, everyone out there that's testing their boundaries, I know it's hard, but it is so important to me to be communicating. As long as you are in a safe, happy relationship, you've got to keep the lines of communication open, even if they are scary, even if you're like, this is not going to feel good to have to communicate, but I need them to understand. There's no way that they're going to understand if you don't talk. If you don't talk about it.
Yeah, or if I was like, well, clearly your body was turned on.
So this is all mental.
So this is, like
you can work through this with your therapist.
Like if you were just having positive thoughts about it instead of negative ones, it would have gone better because your body was fine with it.
Yeah.
Like
which is out there. People are saying that it's disgusting.
We understand that there are a lot of frustrated people in relationships. We get that.
Mm-hmm.
We know that this is not easy. This isn't just like get over it and you'll be fine. We know that there are a lot of people who are working on a lot of difficult things in their marriages, and this is one of those.
Yeah.
And we are always here for people to talk to.
Yep.
And we are non-judgmental.
We try our best, obviously. If you come to us and let us know that you're in a dangerous situation, well, that might be a little bit hard for us to not have some judgment and try to help you towards the other person, I mean.
Yeah.
You know?
I think when I say we're not judgmental, I think it's more so like if an allosexual person reaches out and is just like, to be honest, like, I don't think I can do this.
Oh, well, yeah. In those cases, yeah. I mean, you might even get a phone call from Skylar if you do that.
Yeah, so
if you're willing.
So I think it's more so that when I mean, if you're clearly in a dangerous, situation, it's not like we're going to be like, "Oh, well, that's your relationship and, good luck."
Yeah.
But I just mean like we're on both sides of the aisle. If someone's reaching out, we try to, talk to you how we can and give whatever advice that we can.
Right.
And we understand that there are some marriages or relationships that will end because of this.
Well, yeah, going back to the compatibility that we talked about, it can be a case of being incompatible. It really can. I think it's recognizing when that is the case but, doing what you can to see if that is the case. Because I don't know if you can just automatically think that without communicating and trying to see if there's something that can be worked out, right?
Yeah.
So before we wrap up this episode, I wanted to just talk for a second about something super silly and trashy. Skylar and I love Love Island, okay? I'm a little bit embarrassed by it, I'm not going to lie. But it's our show. We love it so much. And it just, it boggles my mind. All these conversations about sexual chemistry that just like trumps everything. I mean, does it blow your mind too, Skylar?
To a degree, but we've talked about how allosexual people, that's normally how they figure out if they even want to talk to someone, is if they're attracted to them.
I can't relate to it at all, obviously. It's so, I'm blind to it. I'm literally blind to it. So when you see these displays of no sexual chemistry complaining, like they've had amazing conversations and they really love the vibe of the person. And then they're like, but we don't have as much sexual chemistry. I really want to feel that you know? I'm just like, but they're so cool. You like them. You like how they are. You're telling me you're going to give up on this person because there's not enough oomph?
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It'd be nice to hear from the other asexuals listening. Like,
I think
are
a
you
lot
blind to it completely as well? I think you would be.
I think there's actually a lot of asexual people that don't like even watching those shows.
I can see that. Do you think I like it because I'm a romantic asexual?
Maybe. I think your thing is that you are hopeful for any kind of dating reality show, whether it's 90 Day Fiancé, Married at First Sight,
Don't confess all my trashy sins.
The Bachelor, Bachelorette, what's the other one with the pods?
Love is Blind.
Love is Blind, Love Island, Too Hot to Handle.
We don't need to bring up Too Hot to Handle.
Because
even on the ultimate.
But even on Too Hot to Handle, because that's the whole thing is like, yeah, sex, and
I know
we're gonna do all this stuff, and then the cone comes out, and then you see them trying to grow as people, and you're like, oh, they're gonna. Even The Perfect Match, like.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm a sucker for some romance for sure. However, I think that there's a bigger component to it that I feel like it's fascinating. Like I'm fascinated by it. I'm intrigued by all the different humans and the way that they react to things. And I don't know. I have some deep insight that comes from watching it sometimes.
Well, and I think it's also interesting where you have shows like Married at First Sight or Love is Blind, where they're like highly curated people.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that they're put with or in those situations, there's an actual chance that you're going to find a person that you're highly compatible with.
Yeah.
Where Love Island or Too Hot to Handle, it's like just random people.
Yeah.
And so you're basically telling 10 people, 12 people to like fall in love.
Yeah.
And that becomes very difficult, as especially we see on Love Island, where it's like one day they're like trying and the next day they're not, and then someone else comes in, and so you can see where there's more of that disconnect. Or
I just can't believe someone's head would turn.
Yeah.
Over just a sexy body. Like, what? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
What? Is this real life? Is this really how people look at things? Come on.
It seems to be more that's the guy's mentality. Because even the girls were like, oh, that guy is fit. Like his body is like, wow.
Right, they say that, but they don't do anything.
Yeah,
about
they're not then going after that person.
But
so.
You have the dudes being like, I'm gonna get to know her because she's sexy.
Yep.
Yeah. And totally disregarding their super solid for the show, I will say that, relationship that they've been growing for the last 3 weeks. And it's like, it's meant nothing. So anyway, I don't know if there's other Love Island fans out there. Reach out and let us know if you are. I I think does that do it for tonight? Today?
Shout out and thank you to the recent person who bought coffees for us
Yeah, thank you so
from
much.
our website on the Buy Me a Coffee. So alloandace.com if you would like to donate. And if
I'm going to announce something that you don't know I'm going to announce.
Well, first, if you want to reach out to us, we are on all socials pretty much. And you can also email us at alloandacepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes. And by this weekend, Skylar's looking at me like, what is she going to say?
Right.
No, don't say right. By this weekend, we will have at least a few options as far as merch goes on the website. We will. Skylar's giving me a look. We will. We will have at least a few t-shirt options and possibly a few sticker options. He's looking at me. This is happening. I'm ready. Let's do it.
I'm excited to see what she comes up with.
We've been asked about this so many times. It's time.
Yeah.
Anyway, please reach out for sure. And thank you for listening. We appreciate you all so much. And we look forward to hearing from you.
See ya.
Bye.